viewers, the piece of music that you just heard perhaps has rekindled your thoughts about someone very special, someone who deserves to be called a genius, a wizard. The focal point of my discussion today is definitely this personality and the magic that he created with his movies and other creations. The topic of discussion, I believe, is very exciting as the theoretical premise happens to be the blue ocean strategy, something that is all about innovation with a meaning and innovation with a difference. Revisiting blue ocean strategy with a personality brand example, thus is the topic I am going to discuss in this particular video. Myself, Dr. Kishalay Roy, a PhD in management from IIT ISM Dhanbad, with over 2 decades of experience in industry, academics, content development and content supervision. Now, when it comes to a brief introduction to Blue Ocean strategy, it is a culmination of all such strategic moves adopted by a brand that creates an uncontested marketplace and makes competition irrelevant. It is a strategic move that, although is hard to copy by competitors, but then it seems, or rather it serves as a source of inspiration for many in the industry. So when it comes to strategy, especially when we talk about business strategy, there are 2 perspectives of strategy. One is red ocean and the other is blue ocean. See, as the name suggests, this red ocean, if we look at it, it is about the market competing strategy, whereas blue ocean is about market creating strategy. When we talk of red, it talks about blood, because blood is red in color. And where from this blood comes? It comes from the blood bath that happens perhaps when the competitors, the players in a particular industry, they consider the structure of an industry as given, and they cannot think beyond the industry. There is a certain marketing pie which is available to them, and each of them are fighting for a greater share of that pie. Now this continuous infighting that happens between the competitors, that's what gives rise to this blood, this red ocean. So we will find that when it talks about the red ocean strategy, the first point is about structure shapes the strategy. The industry structure that shapes the strategy and the strategic moves of the players in that particular industry who are fighting for the existing demand. There is no sort of strategic move made to turn the non-customers into customers or to bring new customers into the industry. It is all about that existing set of customers, and each particular player is trying to grab the customer of others. Their strategic moves are about attracting the existing customers. And the main area of their activity is either they are going for pursuing differentiation or they are going to pursue low cost. So one might be offering products at a lower cost, and definitely it is low cost over here customers, or you are going for differentiation where you are trying to make your product more meaningful, your product stand out from the crowd. But then whatever positioning you are doing to your brand, it is within this particular industry, within the permissible limits of the industry where you are working. But when we look at this market creating strategy, we find that it is a strategy that shapes the structure. It is your move that creates an industry. It is your move that creates a new demand, that attracts non-customers to your business. And how you go about doing that, it is about the simultaneous pursuit of differentiation and low cost. And you look not just to create a positioning within the industry, but you try to create a business out of your industry. And that is how you go about creating a marketplace which is beyond your industry, which is an uncontested marketplace where no one else has previously entered in that particular industry. Now here we find there are a list of brands which we find, and there are case studies which are available on the Case Center platform, which happens to be one of the largest repositories of case studies in the world. And we find brands like the Indian Premier League, Nintendo, Comic Relief, Amazon, Andrew Ryu, Wikipedia, Apple, and there are a host of other brands worldwide that have successfully adopted the Blue Ocean strategy. Please understand something, that Blue Ocean strategy is about creating a uncontested marketplace and attracting non-customers to your business by creating and shaping your business in an entirely different manner. But it certainly does not mean that no one can catch up with you after a certain point of time. Because if you talk of Apple, or for that matter Tata Nano or Skype or whatever, who happened to create a Blue Ocean at one point of time, there was a certain time frame after which there were competition and these brands were suppressed. Perhaps the reason of that suppression being that after they went on creating a Blue Ocean for the first time, they were unable to keep innovating, to keep continuing the simultaneous and successful pursuit of differentiation and low cost, because of which they failed to offer that value to the customer or that value innovation to the customer. So if you create a Blue Ocean, it does not mean that you will continue to be a Blue Ocean strategist for the entire lifetime. It's a continuous process by which you stand out to be a successful Blue Ocean strategist. Now earlier in my YouTube channel, The Marketing Gurukul, I spoke of the Blue Ocean strategy, and at that point of time I took the example of Anand Kumar Super 30. Perhaps we are all aware of, especially after watching the Hrithik Roshan movie, that Super 30 happens to be a brand where the underprivileged students are given free coaching by Anand Kumar, and he has successfully coached a number of such underprivileged students for the IITs, and it is definitely a Blue Ocean move, because there were a lot of innovative things which were done, and whatever was done, it is very difficult to get copied by the competition. For more details, I have definitely offered the YouTube link over here. You can always go and watch out that particular video on my YouTube channel, The Marketing Gurukul. Now coming to the personality brand, the focal point of this deliberation today, Satyajit Ray. Now when we look at Ray's body of work as a filmmaker in retrospect, we deduce that it is nothing short of being called a Blue Ocean move for several reasons. Over here I have listed just a few honors that came Ray's way: the honorary Oscar, the Bharat Ratna, the Dada Saheb Phalke Award, Legion of Honor, Ramon Magsaysay Award, Sangeet Natak Academy Award, and numerous national and international awards that came his way. In fact, the world knows Satyajit Ray more as a filmmaker than anything else. But he was a great graphic artist. He was a great storyteller. He was a great designer. He was a great music composer. Even if we look at the movies, just if we look at the department of movies, we find that he was not just a film director. He was a complete artist in the whole activity of filmmaking, because he was into music, he was into editing, he was into screenplay, he was into dialogue writing, he was into camera. So everything, this person was everything rolled into one. So but over here, for this particular discussion, I will be restricting myself to speaking about Ray and discussing about Ray's body of work as a filmmaker. Now, when we look at this, what Ray did, we need to look at that point of time when Ray started his journey as a filmmaker, and that was sometime in the 1950s. So at that point of time, when we look at a market which is a Bengali cine-going audience, coming to the three tiers of non-customers that are discussed in any Blue Ocean strategy class. The first tier of non-customers were those cine audiences of commercial Bengali cinema who were probably getting fed up of being served the same thing. It was those stories which were about traditional Bengali families, family-oriented stories, and it had lot of songs. Many times it was the songs that became more popular than the movies themselves. And as far as innovation goes in terms of script or in terms of filmmaking or in terms of treatment to filmmaking, there was not much of a differentiation that people could observe. So these set of non-customers were already thinking of taking their attention out of movies and concentrate on something else. And then there was the the second tier of non-customers who were just refusing to watch the Bengali commercial cinema. They were audiences of Hollywood films and they were audiences of theatre. They found more soul and more realism in these two avenues of entertainment than commercial Bengali cinema. And then there were the third type of non-customers who were just unexplored. And these were the people who were perhaps getting entertained or were visiting the sports events in the city or literary events in the city, but they never thought of going to movies, and the movie makers were just not able to bring them to the cinema halls. Now, in such a scenario, what did Ray do? Now, if we track Ray's journey from the 1950s, so his first movie, Pather Panchali, came sometime and released sometime rather in 1955. We will find that at a point of time, in this strategic canvas, what we can see is the offering level is plotted against the key competing factors, and we need to look at the key competing factors over here. Normally, when we talk of Bengali cinema at that point of time, it was about a heavy investment that went into the commercial superstars. Uttam Kumar happened to be one of the matinee idol at that point of time, and there was almost every third film that featured him as a lead actor. When it comes to actresses, it was Suchitra Sen, uh, and then there were stars like Savitri Chatterjee, Supriya Devi, who were some of the leading actors at that point of time. Now, secondly, what was observed was that the filmmakers used to have a heavy dependence on music. As I said earlier, often it was the music that delivered success for a particular movie or defined success for a particular movie. A movie was known more by the music, and that music was purely for entertainment, because perhaps to keep people within an auditorium, this music was required. When it comes to plots, they were those run-of-the-mill plots. Uh, some of the movies had the stories that were inspired by or that were directly taken from the novels of Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay, or for that matter other literary greats of that point of time, and they were shown as it is. There was not much of a tweaking that was done with the original story. It was mainly about that family orientation, that traditional setting where the women were meant for the household work, the men were there. Everything was very, very stereotyped in nature as far as the characterization was concerned. Now, that was the scenario at that point of time. But with Pather Panchali, and then subsequently with lot of other of his movies like Porosh Pathor, like Devi, Jal Saghar, Obhijan, and one after the other movies that followed, Mohanagar and other movies, what we found constantly was that Ray did away with this intake of commercial superstars as lead actors for his movies. His actors were either relatively unknown faces, or they were the actors from the world of theatre, which he felt made for better acting prowess and more authentic build-up for his film, a more authentic ingredient for his film. So we will find that in most of his films, it was Soumitra Chattopadhyay who debuted with his movie Opur Samsar. Even the iconic Pather Panchali, you will hardly find any superstar in that particular movie, but it's a cult movie. Similar is the case with all the other movies that I have mentioned. So stars who later became stars like Sharmila Tagore or Aparna Sen, they were all relatively unknown faces when Ray took them in his movie. He was not depending on music. He wrote his own story, or he went for the stories of Bibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay or Shankar, or for that matter Sunil Gangopadhyay, and everywhere in each of his films we saw, of course, Rabindranath Tagore, with whom based on his story he made Teen Konna and later on Ghare Baire. And in both cases we found that he did quite some amount of tweaking to the original story to better fit it into the celluloid scheme of things. And it really worked. The plots were more realistic. That is one very, very important thing. The music, definitely Ray's films had music, but the role of music was very, very different to the music that we saw in commercial Bengali cinema. The music took the story forward. The music was a means to communicate the story to the public. It was not just about entertainment, it was about amplification, amplifying the story, amplifying the very crux of the story. Apart from the movies that I mentioned, when we look at movies which were specially meant for the kids in mind, for the young souls in mind, like Shonar Kella, like Gupi Gain Bagabain, like Joy Baba Phalunath, or later on Hirok Raja Deshe, the music of these films were actually a way of communicating the story of the movie. The lyrics, the music, everything did the talking, and they amplified the gist of the story, the basic essence of a particular movie. And finally, by his way of making films, his way of interpreting a particular script and adapting it for celluloid, brought lot of international recognition and awards, which was something definitely which was quite not thought of, or which was not coming in that way for commercial Bengali cinema prior to Ray. Now, when we look at this particular grid, which is also called as the ERRC grid, this is also called as a 4-action framework in the context of Blue Ocean strategy. It talks of elimination, it talks of certain factors being reduced, certain factors being raised, and certain factors being created. Now, these simultaneous pursuit, these 4 actions created a new value curve for a particular brand that had to offer. And in this case, the brand that I am talking of is definitely Satyajit Ray and his body of work. Now, coming back to the slide where I was, and if I look at the ERRC grid, what were the factors that Ray eliminated? He eliminated the use of commercial superstars in his movies. We find that at a point of time when Uttam Kumar was at his peak in his career, Ray had tried Uttam Kumar, or had gone for Uttam Kumar in just 2 of his movies, 2 of his 36 movies, so to say. One was Nayak, which, if someone could do justice to that particular role, it was definitely Uttam Kumar. And the other was Chiriyakhana, which sadly did not click at the box office. So you understand that even when he went for Uttam Kumar, it was a role which was meant for Uttam Kumar. That is the reason why he went. He did not just invest his efforts in a commercial superstar just because that superstar is popular. He went for selecting his stars based on the script, based on the story, and based on how authentic that particular person will be on screen. He also did away with heavy dependence on irrelevant music. Music just for the sake of music, he never relied on that. He never relied on the run-of-the-mill plots. Of the feature films that we talk of, if we see the entire body of work of Ray, we were not going to find any run-of-the-mill plots. Each and every movie has a different plot. It has a different taste and temperament to offer. It has a different flavor to offer. What did he raise? What did he? So he, as far as the elimination and reduction is concerned, these are the things that he either eliminated or reduced. He employed actors rather than stars. That is what he raised. There were greater component of his stars who were actors, either unknown faces at the beginning and later on they gained popularity, or they were the theatre actors like Utpal Datto, who has acted in quite a number of Ray's movies. The plots were realistic. Even if you see movies made for kids like Gupi Gain Bagamain or Hirok Raja Deshe, they were just not fantasy movies. There was a lot of learning from those movies, and those learnings are even relevant today in today's scheme of things. When we look at the political turmoil, when we look at the kind of political chaos and things like that, we find that there are a lot of things to be learned from these movies. So they have stayed evergreen, they have stayed relevant even today. The music has been more meaningful and customized to the plot, customized to the requirement of a particular movie. And again, we can always go back to the music of Gopi Gain Bhagabain and Hirav Raja Deshe, and of course a host of other movies which are there. But these two movies had lot of songs, lot of music, and the music really was amplifying the overall essence of these movies. And then what did he create? Apart from creating meaningful and customized music, he created lot of recognition for India. He made the world sit up and recognize India as a movie powerhouse, as a place where relevant, meaningful cinema was being made, and which was not just being liked by a certain section or a cross section of the audience of that particular country, but entire nation abroad, people were liking it. His movies were not just being liked by the Bengali community worldwide. His movies were liked by all, and that is the reason why probably Akira Kurosawa mentioned that if if you have not seen a movie of Ray, it is as good as you have not seen the moon and the stars in the sky. So anyone who has seen the moon and the stars, the sun, moon, and everything, they are supposed to see a Ray movie, because it is so very important to catch the wizardry of this particular filmmaker. When we talk about value innovation in the context of Blue Ocean, we know that it is the simultaneous pursuit of cost and buyer value that brings about the value innovation. The cost savings are made by eliminating and reducing the factors an industry is competing on. Over here, we have already discussed as far as hiring a popular artist and paying a lump sum money, astronomical sum of money, just for the popularity's sake, hiring a huge music artist or a music composer to compose the movies, or hiring someone who is a very very popular playback singer. All such costs were done away with. It was Ray who was composing the music. Just it was among some 3 or 4 movies of his where the music was composed by the legendary musicians like Ravi Shankar or Ali Akbar Khan, Vilayat Khan. But then since Teen Konna, it has been Satyajit Ray who was composing the music for his movies. Also, we don't always find lot of established singers who have sung in his movie. When I talk of Gopi Gain Bhagabain, or for that matter Hirav Raja Deshe, where there were a lot of songs, mostly the songs were done by Anup Ghoshal, who happened to be an emerging artist at that point of time. The buyer value was lifted by raising and creating certain factors that the industry never offered. The industry never relied on unknown faces before Ray. So you always had those Uttam Kumar or Vishwajit or Pradeep Kumar or Basanta Chaudhary. So these were the people who were to be seen on the screen. So here we found that a host of new actors came by through Ray's films. So whether it was Soumitra Chatterjee, or it was Shubhendra Chatterjee, or it was Dhritiman Chatterjee, so Anil Chattopadhyay, we found these actors coming up to the forefront through Ray's movies. The music, and of course, who does not like to be receiving accolades? Now, when the national recognition came in terms of the numerous national film awards and the international recognition that came by, it was not just a case of being proud by as far as we Bengalis are concerned, but it was about feeling proud as a nation. So viewers, I hope that you found this discussion very interesting. I'm sure you will have your own thoughts that may supplement ideas discussed or may open up an entirely different arena for discussion and debate. Whatever it is, I will love and I will look forward to hearing from you. So do post your comments and feedback on this video. Thank you.